Welcome to the Moodboard podcast. This is episode 9, and this is Cesar,
This is Aaron.
and we are two creatives helping others unlock their creative potential by having meaningful and insightful conversations. So, in today's episode, we would like to cover ways that you can stand out from the competition. In this new wave of new graduates, more people looking for jobs, looking for career changes, are looking for for their next break, and it is important for us to cover ways that you can stand out in a positive way from the rest, because this is going to help you land that job, land that interview, and people are going to remember you for good reasons.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And also, it's a good way of operating just naturally, creating a good story for yourself as you're, building a career. How do you bring something unique to the table? Like, what's your sort of unique skill combination? And so I'm curious to hear from you, Cesar, is a good, how do you craft a great story? How do you do that? How do you stand out with a great story?
I think it's an ongoing process. No matter where you are in your career, whether you're in high school, college, or you're already in the professional field, I think you should always be involved with a community of like-minded creatives, people, professionals, because these relationships, these networking um, initiatives will help you with achieve your career goal. So, for example, if you're in high school, make sure that you joined, art groups or like arts and crafts, or groups that, I don't know, they do woodworking. So anything that can help you to be successful in college. And if you're in college, make sure that you joined groups such as, if you're an industrial designer, join the IDSA, Industrial Designer Society of America. Join that group, because every college has a chapter, and those groups are there for you to help you. So you're in college, join groups like that. And in the professional world, once you're out of college, don't just stop there, but make sure that you go to convention centers, you go to events, you go to networking events. So make sure that no matter where you're in your career, you stay relevant, and that way, you can have all these talking points. Let's say when you're in an interview, and companies and brands like when you say that you are involved in the industry, and that people know you in the industry, because that's gonna look good on the company by having you as an employee, and that's important, because you will be surprised not a lot of people make that effort. So when you're applying for a job, everyone presents a resume, everyone presents a portfolio, everyone has a LinkedIn, but what else? So I would love to hear your thoughts about ways that you can help tell a different story, and not only different for the sake of being different, but a better story that it's catered to you and highlights your experience and expertise.
I think it really comes down to being honest with where your curiosity wants to take you, and where it's been taking you. I do think that the most interesting people to work with and the most inspiring have outside interests from what they're dedicated or what they're known for. They have a wide breadth of interest, and I think once you're able to like break into the industry and have some experience, you quickly learn what types of people you gravitate towards, what kinds of work styles resonate with you the most. And it's really just like important to know yourself and know like what your strengths are, what your interests are, as you're crafting this narrative of, you know, what kind of designer, what kind of creative you are, what things, because the things that interest you are the things that tend to shape the way your career goes and where your focus uh, is. And a lot of the time, at least in my experience in the beginning, it really came down to paying attention to where my curiosity was taking me. For example, I was very drawn to mindfulness and um, the benefits of meditation on the mind. And so that took me down this road of like mindful objects or things that benefit your consciousness in that way. And so that kind of led me towards an identity or identifying with design that is mindful of people. And so I think really just like being honest about your curiosities and where you want to, what stands out to you and how you can merge that with who you are as a designer. Because like you said, everyone has a portfolio, everyone has a resume, everyone's case studies will look the same. What people really want to see is who is the person behind the work. What is their story? And building a great story for yourself involves doing things that are honest to you, meaning you really care about them and you're really genuinely interested to the point where you could probably talk your head off about certain topics, and paying attention to those and figuring out a way to bring that into your portfolio, either through case studies or taking your time with an about page that highlights your strengths and your interests and how that applies to your process. I think that makes a really compelling portrait of a designer, a creative, and what they can bring to the table.
I love that. I love that you articulated really well assets that people could use to portray themselves in a, not in a different way, but like a more honest way. And I think highlighting versus hiding helps you helps you more at the end of the day. However, I do want to mention that it is important for us to be mindful of how to appeal to, in a genuine way, without, being fake or saying things that you don't believe in or things like that. But you have to find an angle to appeal to people, to appeal to the brand that you want to work with, to appeal to the recruiter. And an example would be if, let's say, that the person you're talking to likes, I don't know, McDonald's, you can find a way to connect by bringing up something regarding to McDonald's. And so, like, finding tactful things to talk about,
Yeah.
to connect, can make even a stronger connection. And I also quickly wanted to add the I think a way to help you structure how to tell this story, to help you like organize thoughts. It would be something that has helped me is Start with Why by Simon Sinek. That book has helped me organize thoughts in a way that uh, are a little bit more compelling, more appealing, and it just has helped me immensely, like in general, how I communicate and how I present ideas, projects, and things like that. So I would like to, hear of maybe any reading material or things that help you structure your way of thinking.
Yeah. I think the main, a couple of things. The first one is uh, Design Your Life. That book was really important. I mentioned it before in a couple of episodes back, I think. Um, which, by the way, the Start with Why book is fantastic. It's so great. I came in touch with it early on, and it really is a powerful structure. Design Your Life is really great because it helps you with some guided activities. Just find and identify the things that you're really into, the things that you value. So it has this one exercise where it asks you to write down what your work view is. What do you find being fulfilling in your work? What are you wanting to um, what do you want to aim for when you're working on stuff? And then it has like a personal view of like, what do you enjoy when you're outside of work? And so being able to see what you value, what you want to emphasize more, helps you articulate who you are and who you want to become, what you want to work for. And so that's been very beneficial for me. Another book has been a little bit more on the design side of things, but it's called like, I think it's like uh, stories in the user journey or something like this. And I know it sounds a little technical, and it is, but it isn't. It really, the core idea is that everything in design, everything that we do revolve around story. It's been like this since the beginning, and it will continue to be like this because human beings gravitate to go towards great stories. We're hardwired for that. So knowing how to tell your story and knowing your own story is very important. And one thing I'll never forget, I was listening into a talk at the Savannah College of Art and Design where Cesar, you and I went to school. There was someone who was presenting, and they were saying, get really good at telling your superhero story, your origin story, right? There's a difference between just a regular story and an origin story, because the way you start out, the things that you pay attention to, that is your calling card. That unique, weird combination of skill set and interest is what is it's your DNA. It's what you bring to the table. Um, and I think those two books are really great. And the Start with Why book, I mean, that's all you need. I think if you are in high school or you're just graduated and you have kind of a fuzzy idea of what you want to do, of maybe what you're interested in, it really will pay off highly to sit down and write out these things. Like write out what you're interested in, write out what you want to do, what your work view is, what kind of people you want to work with. Because when it comes to interviews and calls with recruiters or calls with other designers who are interested in hiring you, it will show how much thought you have put into the whole process, because you will have so much self-knowledge that when it comes time to talk about yourself, you can do it in a very succinct and articulate way.
Yeah. No, I really resonate, with those points, because, to be an interesting person, you have to do interesting things.
Yeah, precisely.
And
Exactly.
and highly likely you're going to meet the people that you probably want to work with doing those same activities that you're doing.
Exactly.
And that's the importance of finding like-minded people. Not in the sense that like, oh, we'll have to think the same, but we're open to the same things despite of the outcome. And I think you'll connect, at many levels. And like, again, not every relationship has to be a transaction, or every relationship is gonna lead to business or to a job or something like that. Maybe it's, you just become good friends. But, these people, this good friend can then help you later on making an intro or helping you line a project that you might need years down the road. But you do it with the genuine desire to connect and to like, hey, let's have a good time, let's grow, let's learn. And I think we can use like our friendship as an example,
Yeah.
because we met in this class, and we really saw that we were passionate about what we were doing, and we were like, oh, let's find different ways to like, to be creative, stay creative. And so like people like us,
Yeah.
like in our example, our case, is people that you want to be friends with, people that are wanting to push the envelope, people that are reading, that are that are intriguing, that have a desire to become better. I
Yeah,
think
that
that's
they're
people that you
hungry.
want to have. Yeah, people that you want to have in your corner. And look, then later on it could lead to ventures like this. Like we decided to start a podcast, and we are also like, very open to what opportunities this might bring, uh, you know, to us. But we have to start somewhere, and it's good for you to to cultivate those relationships, uh, whatever you are, high school, college, or now out in the professional world. Cultivating these kind of relationships is very important.
Yeah, I heard someone share this quote, which is everyone is playing this game, right? Some people are playing short-term games, some people are playing long-term games, and the idea is to associate yourself or connect, build relationships with people who are also playing the long-term game, who you can partner up in the long run to do things, um, in the future or help each other out. And Cesar, when like you highlight something that's core and so important to this, like the idea of networking can sometimes sound a little like businessy, or like you're too interested in the, making it transactional or whatnot. But I think people are really good at identifying genuine curiosity and genuine interests. And I think the one of the best skills that you can work on is cultivating that interest in other people and cultivating the desire to see others succeed as well, and providing value in that way, connecting people, making yourself sort of an advocate, but in a supporter of the people who are in your community, in your network. And being part of a community is so key and important, because you meet people in that way that you can eventually work with, or help each other out in some way. But at the root of everything, it's like the sense of community, the humanity, the finding people who align with your values and your own. You kind of meet, maybe you don't agree on everything, but you are equally like curious, and you stimulate each other's imaginations. And so that's really important. That brings me to another question. Cesar, what do you think about like having a story, for example, but maybe like you sent me a video the other day, for example, and the person who was talking in this video, he's kind of giving a lecture, and he's saying how if you're a plumber, he uses this example, if you're a plumber, your story could be that, you fix plumbing issues, or your story could be, I help people solve their problems with this unique skill set. And so that kind of changes, it opens up the possibilities and the imagination. So those are two different stories. I guess to go back to this question, it's like, how do you take a story and reframe it in a way that's strong, in the way that presents you in the best light possible?
I think this could take a little bit of trial and error, because I don't know if at least for me, I wasn't able to come up with that answer like right away. So it was like a little bit of trial and error, seeing what sounds good, seeing what sounds concise, appealing. And I think of this example that they would give us in in industrial design when I was at the Savannah College of Art and Design. There was a very good example that could help reinforce the point that this guy was making in the lecture about the plumbing. And often the right question, the right brief could yield the right outcome. Because sometimes the outcome is not the issue, it's just that maybe you have asked the wrong question. And so the example that they would give us in school, how to think, it was that, okay, you could see you could tell someone to design a hair dryer, or you can tell someone to find a way to dry your hair faster. So you have the goal in, like, you're putting the goal as the final, as the guiding star for the project, versus the product as the guiding star. Because you're telling someone to do a hair dryer, they're just gonna do the variation of a hair dryer. But if you tell them, let's find a way to dry your hair faster, I think it yields for like an open-ended question to maybe better or more efficient ways to dry your hair. Or what if, like, you don't even have to get your hair wet, so you can use dry shampoo. So you start like finding things like that, and I think that's how those products come to a reality, is by asking the right question. And and I think you could use that approach for yourself. in terms of
Yeah.
like, okay, you're an industrial design. How can you, instead of saying I design products, you could say I I create beautiful I create beautiful physical experiences, something along those lines, or you know, I create beautiful functional sculptures. Like you have to add to what you do, you have to add an aesthetic, like something
Mm.
appealing to it. You can say I do beautiful things instead of say
Yeah.
I make things, I design things. I make beautiful things. I make a engaging product, appealing product. And there are like, you can just troubleshoot and write a list of things that resonate with, with what you do, in a very engaging and appealing way. Um, it also makes me, move on before we move on to exploring different ways of you standing out. I
Mhm.
think I want to close the story, telling a better story point with this little no scenario, but little memory that I have that is coming to my mind. Um, it was this guy. He was an architect. And he was a commencement speaker at SCAD. I think was it 2014 or something like that. But anyways, um, he was a commencement speaker at SCAD, and he was an architect. Uh, he was the he. Oh, his name was Arthur Gensler.
Okay.
He did the first Apple campus.
Oh,
So he got
wow.
he got to work with Steve Jobs.
Wow.
Uh, but his anecdote was that he was on a plane, on a flight, I don't know where, but he knew who the guy sitting next to him was,
Mhm.
and he they knew of that San Francisco airport had plans to expand, and he knew about it. And he knew the guy, behind that, and the guy I think sat next to him. So they struck a conversation, and the guy asked him, "What do you do?" So I think that "What did you do?" question for him was like in those video games, RPG games, that you have like four options. I'm sure through his mind he could have said, "Oh, I'm an architect," or "I have an architecture firm," or I don't know. He might have not even said that, but anyways, his answer was,
Mm.
"I make airports." And
Wow.
of course, shortly after that, he landed that project, and they did the San Francisco airport extension, like the renovated part or whatever.
Wow.
But that was his answer. So, and that reinforces the point that I made about you being sensitive and
Mhm.
mindful about what you say in a way that engages, that is appealing and engaging. So yeah, he says I make airports, and next thing he knows, he's doing the San Francisco airport. And before I move on, do you have any like closing thoughts for telling a
Yeah.
better story?
Yeah. I had this quote that came to mind, and I was just looking for it. That it just reminded me of this E. Cummings quote that I'm going to paraphrase. But he says, always a more beautiful answer to he with a more beautiful question. And I always go back to that. I'm always thinking about that because a lot of times we rush towards like, what's the final thing? Let's go into solution story finding mode. But we really have to get into the habit of sitting with our thoughts and spending enough time framing the question that we're asking, right? I also remember this going to the Coca-Cola Museum, and they have the brief for the Coca-Cola, the iconic Coca-Cola bottle that we all know today. They had the brief on the wall, and the brief was a bottle so distinct. This is the design brief that they gave, because they held a contest like 100 years ago for this Coca-Cola bottle. But this is the brief. A bottle so distinct that it could be recognized by touch in the dark or when lying broken on the ground. And so that's a great example, I think, of being able to frame a question so, like, focused yet so open for interpretation. Just something to think about as you're crafting a story or a more beautiful question. Cesar,
That's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
No, that was really good.
I wanted to bring up the next topic, which is something that you and I have talked about, and that's who, unless you have other questions or other thoughts on this subject, we could talk about it for ages, I think.
No, that was just, no, I think that we cover enough.
Okay.
And like, if any of the audience would like us to elaborate or maybe cover something else regarding this topic, like, feel free to let us know. We can always come back and revisit ideas or topics that we have previously covered, but I think we're good for now. We can move on to the next chapter.
Awesome. Yeah, like, feel free to drop in a comment. We take a look at that. Yeah, let us know if there's anything else. The next thing I wanted to talk about is something that you and I have been discussing, which is the possibility of bringing new people as like future guests on the podcast. So one of the things that we wanted to ask our listeners is, what kind of guests would you like to have us bring in? What are we looking for? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, we value a lot the interview like approach, especially like guests and other people that could provide, like, further insight into the kind of topics we have been exploring, or just anything that could be helpful for you to contribute to your journey. For me, interviews is a very interesting format because to process and to consume information, because it's very straightforward and it's very raw. And I feel like the answer, there are so many things that you could answer, but that answer that you give to the question in an interview, it's important because that means that's what you value. And I've seen, I'm a fan of this book. It's called Pinup, which is a recopilation of interviews. And that's the book. It's just interviews of famous architects on, about their work philosophy, and how they think. But that's the body of work, is interviews. And, I often think, like, oh, this is really good, because there is nothing as straightforward as a question and an answer. And I feel like people take something different from it. And despite of, you giving a straightforward answer, there is still that open-ended um, side of things that can help you like trigger new thoughts. So that's
Yeah.
why we value and appreciate interviews, and we want to be very mindful and uh, about who we bring on the podcast to to help us reinforce, to help us amplify the our mission and vision for for this podcast.
Yeah, I think being able to talk to, like, we don't want to just limit it to other designers or um, people who, you know, are seen as like being in a creative career or whatnot. Like, we really just curious to talk to individuals who are craftspeople, people who are from different walks of life, different industries, who are also fascinated with creativity and human ingenuity, um, and just like get to learn from their experiences and their backgrounds and the way they approach life and their process, because it's it never hurts to explore different ways of thinking, different approaches to solving problems. And there's just so much to learn from having conversations with people who work in a field that is so different from yours. So I'm excited because there are a few people that we already have on the list that we've talked about, and they're interested in coming on. There's one person who is in robotics, Cesar, that I've mentioned to you before. I've had talks with them, and they're really interesting. And I think it would be really cool to learn about robotics. I don't know what you think.
Totally. I would love. Yes, I think that's the kind of, or at least to a certain extent, we want to cover all these fields and professions that are precise, that
Hmm.
require precision,
Yeah.
uh, because creativity is very open ended. But at the end of the day, we have to define.
Yeah.
We have to define um, the open endedness of creativity. Like at the end of the day, the water has to live within a vessel.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we want to explore is fields that we might not consider like, creative or artistic, but we want to show everyone that, hey, it requires creative thinking. It requires,
Yeah.
some sort of like thinking out the box type of approach to make a difference in in your field, despite of what you do. you know creative thinking, or I don't know, however you want to call it, apply creative thinking, it's beneficial. And we want to highlight that through like concrete experiences from the people that have lived those experiences.
Yeah. It's so true that I if we really looked at human ingenuity, I do think that everyone, if you're a human being, you're creative, you're always solving problems, you know, you're always facing problems, you're always having to like figure out solutions. Some of those solutions might be, creative, some of them might not be so much, but what what we're trying to get to, and I think will benefit from speaking to others from different fields, is how did they break into their industry? How did they form connections with their networks, how were they able to resolve conflicts or resolve issues in the process of making the things that they worked on? I think there's so much to draw from, like people with highly technical backgrounds who maybe are more involved with getting the idea produced in a factory, or someone who is dealing with copyright and within the legal system, and like uh, people who are involved in investing and how they approach what opportunities they want to take on and so forth. I'm really excited because we are going to be kind of creating a mood board, if you will, of different industries, different forms of thinking, which will benefit, I think, our listeners who are starting their careers as they, you know, evolve and grow with us.
Yeah, and it will be good also, like, just for anyone to explore different perspectives, different, walks of life, and different points of views that could help you, have this bank of ideas in your mind that, like, oh, so and so said something in a podcast that I listened, it really stuck. Uh, you know, I've really thought about it. I'm still thinking about it, and that's what we're doing this,
Yeah.
because we wanna truly make a positive impact in the industry, in what we're doing, especially now, that there is a lot of, um, it's not easy being out there in the industry. So, like, I think it's important for us to document ways of thinking now, and to hopefully, this could become later on, like, a book at the library, something that you always come back to, or it becomes this, like, a source of knowledge and applications. And we wanna help facilitate that.
Yeah, well said. The podcast as a format, as a medium, it allows us to have conversations over an extended period of time, and allows us to dig deeper into topics that maybe a single Instagram post or a single LinkedIn post or whatever social post you want to think of doesn't do enough justice to. Like, it doesn't allow us to include the nuances and provide context, etc. And so I think this medium, it is such a great opportunity for us to, like you said, record ways of thinking, especially in a time where a lot of this thinking is starting to involve AI in some way, for some. And it's interesting. It'll be interesting to just like make a record, a historical record of just good old fashioned thinking, uh, which I'm excited to dive
Right.
into. Um,
No, uncovering things that are, like, trending right now at the moment,
mhm.
because we don't know if it's something that's gonna stick around for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be really great to have guests on here who can speak to really technical things. I think will be really fun, and getting people who are more, maybe on the aesthetic side of things. To kind of wrap this one up, in the last episode, we were talking a little bit about, in the end, we were talking about AI and what that represents for emerging creatives and people who are getting their start, and also just for people like us who've been around for a bit, um, what it means. And so for the past few years, we've seen Chat GPT and chatbots um, and the kind sort of in really come into the mainstream. And in recent days, Apple has announced that they're bringing Apple Intelligence in, they're embedding it in all of their devices and their product. And so one of the things that I was sort of laughing to myself a little bit was the application of machine generated images where you could, generate an image of like your mom or something, which I was like, what? Why? This this is I guess it's fun, but there's a lot of opportunity there, and we kind of got a glimpse at where we're headed in terms of practical AI application in our daily lives, like helping us proofread an email that we're sending to a recruiter or a potential
Yeah.
opportunity. So I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are on how, new creatives can include or stay current with the tools that are coming into the mainstream. And maybe we can talk about the dangers of outsourcing your creative thinking to these.
Yeah. I think we'll see a combination of, you know, a par, you know, a group of people are going to be on board. A different group of people is going to be like 50-50. And then there's going to be another group of people that are going to be not for it or against it. And I am in the middle. I think I'm 50-50 because I see the value. Well, I've seen and found some applications for AI within my like day-to-day and workflow. But it's like personal, and I don't see it. I don't see it replacing or changing, what I do at the end of the day. And if AI was to be gone tomorrow, fine. You know, I think we'll do what we were doing before, Google search. And I think to me that was a form of AI. It was Google search. The Google search the search engine. That's a form of AI. That it doesn't, it's not presented in the format that AI is being presented, but it served the same purpose.
Yeah.
And I I could see people being, I mean, I'm a little bit cautious. I could see like people being cautious about like, okay, it's AI gonna take my information and then potentially like share some piece of it out there that, that I don't, it's private information or things that you don't want to share because they're yours. And, some people might not feel comfortable with that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a revival or like the, you know of like a flip phone or those, very elemental phones where
Yeah.
like it's just texting and phone call and that's it. And I think if you want photos, well, you just carry a nice camera around. If you want music, you carry iPod, Walkman, whatever. And so I could see a little bit of a revival of that approach like we did before. Of course, we could see like a modern take on it. It would be interesting, with new processes and new design and new aesthetics. I think there is a lot of value in, finding a good balance that works for your brand, for your product. Uh, Finding a balance between analog and digital. But that that device only does that one thing, and it could do it really well. And I don't see any harm in, let's say, taking that approach, because maybe people like feel like, okay, the phone or these companies have been too intrusive
Mhm.
into my work, my life. So maybe
Yeah.
let's just keep things separate, and I use them as I need it. So like if I need a photo, I grab my camera, take the photo. If I miss the shot, oh well. But I don't know.
Okay.
I could see a reshuffling of our relationship with, well, with electronics and with companies that want to incorporate AI. I think people are going to change their that's going to transform their perceptions towards that product or brand.
Oh yeah, like how they approach it. I mean,
Yes.
with Apple in their recent announcement, they were so like repetitive, or they emphasize their stance on privacy, which is really important, right? Because that's one of their pillars. Um, and it was one of the things that Steve Jobs valued, and thankfully, brought into Apple's stance on technology, which is not usually shared by most Silicon Valley companies. Um, there's this idea that privacy is a human right, and so I think you're what you're saying about like the revival. I believe it, because there's an appetite. You will see it in companies releasing uh, phones that do, you know, they look like an iPhone. I think I forget the name of the company, but the phone itself is like transparent. It has very minimal features. And there's another phone called the Light phone. And so there's a appetite and for these products, even if it's a small percentage, there's already groups of people who are taking back their attention and saying, hey, we don't want all this functionality, or I'm choosing to get, a phone that's not smart. Um, and single use devices. Like I was thinking back to my iPod from back in the day, and the stem player now, for example, is such a beautiful device that only does one thing, but it also allows you to experience music in a whole different
Yes.
way, right? And so I think there's going to be opportunities for us to imagine our relationship with objects again. Like we're going to be able to reevaluate what what do we want our things to do in an age where one device can do it all. So I think we're going to see some very interesting applications. And I mean, we talked about this I think last time as well. Like there's companies who are trying to create whatever is the next iPhone killer, or the next, uh, post iPhone device. And I think it's just going to be an interesting thing to see.
Totally. And I'm intrigued to see how like this new chapter in technology and electronics and products evolve. And also I I hope to see more like people that are perceived as artists. Like I want to see more like an artist approach to product. Um because I feel like that's, there is an emotional side of it, and there is a cool aspect of it, because I think artists values aesthetics, visuals, what it looks like, what it feels like, what it looks like from far away. And those are things that, sometimes when when you were designing things in a traditional way, things that those are things that could be overlooked. So I'm hoping that this all these like new entities, new ways of doing things could shake up the way we're designing products, the way products look, and also keeping sustainability in mind in
Yeah.
terms of if the product is gonna only be good for X amount of years, what do you do afterwards? Or can you update the product and things like that? Um,
Yeah. So like having
so
a mindful, full circle way of thinking about producing things.
yes, and there is a case about like single use products. Some people may say, well, it's wasteful to create all these products if I could just have it under one, in one on my phone. But I don't think that works for everyone, and there is no like one answer fits all either. And now with the you know with the privacy concerns, I think some people to a certain extent will like do what fits their lifestyle. and
Yes.
and I also wanted to bring up this. I saw this on Instagram uh, about this post was saying that people, you should cancel your Adobe Creative Suite account because they're going to use your work for AI assets. Uh, so I'm intrigued to see how that's going to change the way we work and how we work, because Adobe Creative Suite is like a very fundamental go-to tool to create, to put things visually. So I'm wondering what other platforms are gonna flourish because of this policy change.
Yeah. That's a great example. Even, whether it's true or not, I've listened to a few YouTubers talk about this, and they have very legalese, like their language and their terms really difficult for, for normal people to kind of understand without having someone explain it to them. And so I think it's so important, again, going back to story, to be very clear about where you stand and where your values are. Because when I think about Adobe, I don't really think about them as like I feel like they're going to do what is best for their bottom line, and they're a big company. They're going to, they're going to get their way, however, whatever it is. But when I think about Procreate, who makes the drawing software, the animation software, their CEO is always emphasizing how they are an artist first company and that they are creating tools that artists can use without worrying about their work being used to train a model or whatnot. And to share a little bit more thoughts on this, and because I have a lot of thoughts, and one of them is I think companies who were, developing these image generating models and any AI that is consuming work from artists without any credit, they started off on the wrong foot. Why? Because they didn't include anyone from the artistic community to really, at least as far as I understand, and as far as I can see from, the reaction of it, of these tools, is that they didn't bring anybody to ask them, hey, is it cool if we use this? Like, should we ask permission? What are the ethical questions around this? They just did it, which is the philosophy that most companies in Silicon Valley have, which is just like break things and, fail fast or whatever. And so what that's done is it's created this almost like this animosity or this like tension between people who make things online and AI. Whereas where I think AI is such a great opportunity and an exciting new uh, technological shift that just hasn't been implemented in great ways that artists can feel like, oh, this is working to make my life easier, not it's working to replace me. Because at the end of the day, I do believe that human beings will want, at least people who really truly value art, they're going to value art that came from another human being because it's different than something that was generated by a click or a prompt or a machine. The source is different. So, do you want the artificial version or do you want the organic version? Those are the two camps that I think is going to come down to.
Yeah, do you want processed food or you want a farm to table type of food?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
just like, if you're running a business and your priorities are just like, dude, I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to get a graphic done for this thing that I'm doing. And the quality doesn't matter. It just needs to be a graphic. You're going to go for the process stuff, right? But if you really care about it, if you really care about the craft and the story and where it comes from, you're going to go to the farm. You're going to go to the organic section or whatnot. You're going to talk to another person and collaborate with that person and in order to make what you're trying to make. So I think as people who are, in the creative industry, artists, it's going to benefit us to stay current, to understand what's going on. I think if you're starting out your career now, you're just getting out of school, you're, using AI maybe to do things and speed up your process, be careful not to lose your like your own creative spirit, your autonomy. Like, be the director, don't be directed, you know? Because when we were starting out our design career in school, our professors taught us to use our hands and our basic tools and our minds to create things before they introduced 3D printers or any sort of machinery. And this was a deliberate action because they wanted us to know how to work with our hand, because you never know when you're going to have to do something and there's no electricity. And if you're outsourcing all of your thinking to a machine, to a piece of software, you're going to need an internet connection. You're going to need electricity at all
Electricity.
times.
Yeah. Wasn't ChatGPT and all this like softwares down a few
Yeah.
days ago or something? You're going down with them. I was gonna say, we should put a pin on this and come back to the next episode for our
Absolutely.
10th episode, which is, I think, is a special, hitting the
A
10th
special
episode
one.
mark.
We should do a live one.
Yes, we should do a live, which is something that we've also been exploring besides the podcast. We want to engage at a deeper level with the, audience, community, and just like, let's do a live, uh, um, like a live show. And this will be besides the podcast. This could help us just connect at another level with, with the audience. And I wanted to put a pin on the topic of, working with your hands and your mind first, working on your intuition first. because there is a lot of those elements, that were very instrumental for me to be successful at my job at Yeezy. And, we can, without spoiling it, or, I want to give it some thought to this uh, for the next episode to truly like deep dive and be able to articulate the importance of you first learning to think and to design with your hands, with training your eye and your muscles to design beautiful products that will translate beautifully, because you're already doing beautiful products. They will translate beautifully to a digital realm, or to a manufacturable form. But I don't think digital tools or any other tools in general, a better tool will not automatically make you a better designer or better at drawing. So I think it's important to focus on the skill rather than on the tool. And I think that's something that we can elaborate on. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited for that one. Thank you, Cesar, for this great conversation again. And
no, likewise, thank you.
This is the Moodboard podcast, where Cesar and I are two creatives having meaningful conversations to help our listeners reach their full creative potential. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, guys.